I cracked all the head bolts loose. Looks like they have a washer that goes along with them. Be careful not to drop those down anywhere. I'll finish taking all of these off, and then we get to pop the head off, have a look at the bottom of it, and see where hopefully see where that gasket failed. So I got all the head bolts off, the obvious ones. What I didn't realize is that under these little rubber diaphragm seals, there were 4 of these little cap screws. One here, one, and the last one over here. And to get them out, my impact driver wouldn't go far enough. So I found a small wrench on my hex shaft screwdriver, was able to sort of, hold it in there, put a little pressure on the wrench, and then beat on the end of this with a dead blow, and it loosened them off enough to get all 4 out. I don't know what the torque specs are on these to put them back in, but might have to see what kind of tool I can come up with to get a torque on it. I can get a 1/4 inch socket in this one and this one, but not in these two. Just give you a bit of a view, hopefully. So that's pretty tight spaces in there, whereas these 2 center ones, let me get the light right. Yeah, these 2 center ones I was able to get a 1/4 inch socket on. Anyhow, now I'll see if I can get the head loose. Yep, that makes the head, gets the head free. So I'll lift that up, get somebody out here to grab the chain when I lift it, and we'll see what the bottom of it looks like. Okay, I've got managed to get a zip strap around the timing chain, so it's down below. Should be able to lift this off and carefully lay it over. Well, there's one seal there. It's hard to say where this came from. There's a bit of carbon on the top of the pistons. That can all be cleaned off. Yeah, a little bit of a carbon ridge. Just going to scrape away a little bit of this and have a look at that gasket. See if I can figure out what failed or why this is all gunked up. Looks pretty consistent that it's around the whole thing, so all the head bolts seem tight. Ooh, better hang on to that. We'll just slide a screwdriver in there. I'm not seeing anything obvious on the gasket. Whatever it was, it looked like it was, you know, probably doing it for the better part of a season. I'm just scraping the top of the fin. I'm not scraping the top of the head at all. Yeah, there's no real telltale signs of, well, that's a little bit of gasket material of where the leakage started or came from. So I probably spent, an hour and a bit on each of these, 2 to 3 hours. Cleaned all the carbon off the top of those two pistons. Just gonna roll it over. And get the other ones to TDC. I'd soaked them with a bit of oil, tranny fluid, just to maybe soften things up a bit. All I'm using is some Scotch Brite pads, WD-40, and lots of elbow grease. So I won't bore you with all the work going into it, but I'll bring you back and show you the finished result. So yeah, that one's still untouched. And this one I've been working this half for about 8 or 10 minutes. So yeah, it takes maybe close to an hour to get them as shiny as the other two. Well, I got pretty much all the carbon off the top of the pistons. The cylinder walls look to be in really good shape. A little bit of crosshatch still there. I got the head soaking with WD-40. You're going to let it soak overnight, maybe soften some of that up. Whoops. And then sort of try to decarbon that and clean it up. So I'm starting to decarbon the heads, or the head. Been using this brown Scotch Brite. I went and bought some blue and some green. I think the green is the heavier duty. And I'm not using the wire brush directly on the head, just using it to grab the Scotch Brite and give me a little more mechanical advantage. Not pushing too hard, just letting it do its thing. Once this is all cleaned up, I think I'll probably lap the valves, just seeing as I have it out. May as well do it. I'll carry on doing this and turn it back on with the finished product. See how clean this gets it. So I sort of been doing a bit of a comparison. I got this side pretty much done. There's a little carbon staining left, but you know, nothing you can feel with your fingers, so I think it's pretty good. Just starting on this side. And I was trying this relatively thin, I think it's Scotch Brite. I had bought it years ago for sort of tuning up drywall mud when I was sanding it. Worked well for that. And it's not bad on removing the carbon. This blue non-scratchy Scotch Brite isn't really doing the trick at all. But the green heavy duty, it seems to, let me get a rag under there, it seems to sort of work pretty darn good. Just using WD-40 as the sort of the cutting agent. It took off that, you know, the stuck-on gasket material pretty quickly. I haven't tried the green stuff on the end of the nut driver yet. See if that works a little quicker. But yeah, it's already cutting through to the, don't know if you can quite see it, but it's getting through to the metal already. So I would say that the green heavy duty stuff is the winner for this. So I think I finished cleaning the carbon off the head. I really like using the that green heavy duty Scotch-Brite. Wish I would have known about that when I was doing the top of the cylinders and the pistons, because it probably would have cut the time down to a third. Anyhow, picked up this compression tool at Canadian Tire for sort of half the price of the other ones. Thought I'd give it a try. Maybe try a smaller magnet. There's one keeper. Come on. And there's the other one. The one thing I did do was I took a flapper disc, and these little tabs didn't quite fit between the spring coils, so I just shaved a bit off at an angle, and seems to work okay. There's a bit of carbon on there, to be expected. It's the exhaust valve. Well, the surfaces don't look terrible. It's going to take a minute and put this in a drill and clean it up with some steel wool or emery cloth. I got some of this 180 open mesh. Well, that cleaned it up nicely. Yeah, I took the carbon off it, cleaned up the face so I can fit the lopping tool on. Take a little bit of the lapping compound. Well, it's got a nice consistent ring around there. And the seat looks good. I think what I will do, having second thoughts about doing it one at a time, I'm going to go through, do all the valves, keep track of where they came out of, and while I have them all out, when I'm done, I'm going to take this down to the car wash and give it a good cleaning with the pressure washer. So I'll bring you back when I start putting it back together. Pretty much going to do the same thing to each valve, so no point in video and all of that. So using the the little Canadian Tire $33 spring compressor. I got all of the valves and springs removed from the head, and I went to the dollar store and picked up, I don't know, $2 or $3 for 3 of them. Some containers, drilled some holes in the top to allow the valve through. So I've got everything labeled 1 through 4, intake and exhaust, so nothing gets lost when I go to put it back together or put in the wrong spot. So I'm off to the car wash. I'm gonna go give this thing a really thorough cleaning, and that's after I finish lapping the valves. And then I'll start putting them back together. I got the head all cleaned up. I did a really light valve lapping just to remove any carbon or buildup, because this has been sitting for since 2017 anyway, so 5 to 6 years. And took it to the car wash, gave it a good bath. Now I'm just checking for warpage. Calls for 0.002 thousandths of an inch, and I'm using my 0.0015, so even less. I've tried a few different straight edges, and all of the results are the same. Cannot slip it underneath anywhere. And here's the finished product. So I would say that number 3, from a warpage perspective, the head doesn't have any issues. A few dents and bruises, but it is 51 years old. So 1 more to go. So I didn't get the cleaning on camera, but I thought I'd show you the after effect. Just using the quadruple aught stainless steel, and or not stainless steel, steel wool, and some WD-40. And this used to look like this. So only took a few minutes. Went over it. I'm going to get started. I don't have my tripod with me today, but I'll do this one up and then bring you back and show you the results of that. And so there's the after effects of maybe 5 or 10 minutes of scrubbing with the steel wool and WD-40. Now I'll attack the upper pipes. And here's number 3, the before picture. And here's the finished product on number 3. Shined up pretty good. A few dents and bruises, but it is 51 years old. So 1 more to go. And here's the last one. Must have laid it over at some point. A couple divots there. But other than that, just needs a bit of a scrubbing. And here's the final one finished. You know, there's a few dings and dents here and there, given that it's 51 years old, but there's no rust holes anywhere in any of all the metal feels really good, so pretty happy with that. Just getting the head prepped to put back on. Popping off these old rubbers or seals. Just using some Lubriplate motor assembly grease. Make everything go back together a little easier. The kit I got was for a wide range of these 750s. So this one has 8 seals for a later motor, but this one isn't designed with the little divot so you can slip the seal on. Just put them on the intake side. I'm just putting the intake valves in, giving everything a coating with that Lubriplate. I did go and pick up a different compressor. That other one wasn't quite doing it for this style or whatever. Just pop in the keepers. Make sure they're seated. That's all there is to it. So I'll put the other two in and then I'll bring you back for one of the exhaust valves, and rather than bore you with all the details. So I forgot to turn the camera on when I did the last exhaust valve. But yeah, they're all in. There's no shortage of videos of how to install valves with a compressor spring. Anyhow, everything's been lubed up with this Lubriplate. Been packing this stuff around for like 35 years. And now I'm going to set this back onto the motor and start looking at buttoning things up. Just feed this rope for the timing chain through the head. Make sure those O-rings are in place. Come on. And it looks like it's sitting down on the jugs quite nicely. I'm going to take a minute and just spin all the washers and nuts on, and then put a bit of a torque on them. So I'm going to start torquing up the head bolts. These JIS, as well as the front and rear 6 mil, they get torqued to quite a lower spec, and I've coated those two with the Honda Bond, and I'm going to coat, according to a lot of the guys on the forums, they say coat these ones with the Honda Bond as well. The other thing I did was, let me find it, put it here somewhere, because you can't get in on these two end ones with a socket unless maybe you grind it down. I found a 1/4 inch socket, and I took just a bit driver, ground the tip off a little bit so it fits these JIS screws nicely, and I JB welded the bit driver into the socket to make a special service tool, so I'll be able to get the proper torque on those when the time comes. Over here I drew out a schematic of where the bolts are and what the torquing sequence is. So I'm going to go through and begin torquing them to, they call for a minimum of 180 up to 204 inch-pounds. So I'm going to start with 50 and then let that sit for a while. And then carry on. So I want to try and make sure that I get this torqued down nice and evenly. Bit of noise in the background. The fellows down the street are building a house, so we'll kind of have to put up with that.
That's 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 12. Now over to this corner. 13.
To set these down in there, just going to use a magnet and a pick.
And 1 more to go.
These ones call for 72. I'm set at 50 right now. I think I'll back it down to about 35.
Here's 35. Where did I put my 10 now? That's number 18, and this one's number 19. Not sure if I'll be able to reach it without an extension. Yep, rather not use an extension because it sort of changes the torque a little bit, and I don't know how to compensate for it. That's 20. Come on, get on there. There we go. It's 21, and the last bolt.
That's number 22. So I'm going to let these sit for probably an hour or so. Just let everything settle into place. I'll find something else to do. And come back and I'll finish the torquing. I got to get rid of these O-rings and put some new ones in place. Whilst I'm waiting for the hour to run out, and then I'll torque those bolts up a little more. Some of this, the wire wrap is pretty crusty. Maybe I'll cut from the inside. Might even try a pair of clippers. Yeah, it's pretty brittle. The plan is to get rid of all of this and replace it with some nice new split loom. Looks like somebody just taped it all up. Maybe that's a factory job, I don't know. Anyhow, I'll busy myself with that and bring you back either for the finished product of this or to finish torquing or torque those bolts up a little more. I'll carry on torquing these. I'm going to take them up to 100, which is the max of my little 1/4 inch torque wrench, and then I'll get an adapter for the for my 3/8.
I don't remember if I did this one already. Okay, so that's 4, 5, the other one's called for 72. We're a little past it. So there's 72. Now for my special adapter tool. Apparently these 6mm can strip out fairly easily, so I'm gonna err on the side of caution. 19, 20. And the last one. Just go over and check those again. Actually, let's start with number 17.
Hey, I'd say the 6mm bolts are done. Again, I'll let this sit for 30 minutes or so, and then I'll finish torquing those head bolts up to 180. Okay, I'll let that sit for half an hour or so, and then I'll just double check them, and then I'll start putting on the rest of the pieces. So put a thin coat of that Honda Bond where these pucks sit. I'll clean off the excess in a minute. I'm not 100% convinced it's needed. A lot of people said to use it, but these are held firmly in place by the cam towers, so oh well. I did pay $35 for the tube. Put the O-rings in place. I'm not sure what these two end ones do because it looks like they're just blanked off holes. There's one. Get this rope out of the way. I can time it after. Or I think I should be able to. Well, it's hanging up here. Oh, there we go. Just going to take a minute, make sure I got all these SL. The other one was an AK. KB. They're all marked so they go back, or stamped, so they go back in the mated surface, and an AK. I thread locked the one bolt for the timing cam, or timing chain sprocket, and I set this end so the crossbar is, there's a little cut in it. So this is lined up, the keyway to the top. It's set to top dead center for 1 and 4. I verified that both 1 and 4 are sitting at the top. So I'm gonna and just to be on the safe side, I want to make sure I don't drop the nut down any of the holes, or the bolt. And maybe it won't want to roll on me. Yeah, it's gonna. Guess I didn't need that string after all. Okay, now I'm going to install the rockers and then torque everything down. I think my battery died while I was putting the rockers on. Anyhow, they're in place. No issues. These bolts and nuts all call for 72 foot-pound or inch-pounds, 6 foot-pounds. I think maybe I'll start with I'll start with 50. I couldn't find a tightening sequence anywhere, so I think I'll go one. I think I'll tighten these down and then crisscross, but I'll do it incrementally. So
that's 50 inch-pounds, or maybe about 4.5 foot-pounds.
And the next step, I'll bump it up to 72 and retorque them. They call for 72 to 108, but I don't want to overdo it. So I think I'll err on the side of safety. Before I set the valves, I think I'll install this, this timing chain tightener. So pretty simple. You just depress it, tighten this set nut in a little, or bolt a little bit. Spin these into place. And then back off that little set screw or bolt. Puts tension against the chain. Tighten it up and tighten the lock nut. Okay, I'll finish torquing these down. They said it calls for 72 inch-pounds. I'll put 75 on. Reading too many horror stories about stripping these bolts out of the aluminum, so I think I'll err on the side of safety. Good. Now I can set the valves, the lifters. This is probably going to turn into a pretty long video, or maybe even two. So I'll just show you setting number one. These call for 0.02 or 0.002 of an inch. A little bit of drag. So it's the next day, and let me set this gasket in place. I double checked all the clearances or tolerances for each of the valves. These are, the intake's supposed to be 2 thousandths or 0.002, and the exhaust are 0.003. And I set them a little loose, but not so much so I can't get a 0.0025 in here. So it's somewhere between 2 and 2.5, and I can't get a 4 underneath, a 0.004 underneath any of the exhaust. So they're somewhere between a 3 and a 4. I thought it best to set them a hair on the loose side rather than on the tight side, because that can cause issues on startup. So the valve cover is set in place, and just going to take a minute and torque all of these up to, 6 to 7 foot-pounds, and then I'm going to lay it over and set the frame onto it, put some mounting bolts on, and hopefully start bolting things back together. Well, I didn't get that on video, but I wish I would have. But it took us a couple of minutes to get it in place and upright. Basically laid the motor on its side on some tarps and wood, set the frame over it, dropped in 3 of the mounting bolts, 3 or 4 of them, and just tilted it back up onto the stand. So now I can start bolting things back together. Just going to slide the triple tree back in. I packed the bottom with grease and set the ball bearings in, as well as in the top race. Just very carefully bring that up. I'm going to tighten this up the old way, because I don't have one of those C wrenches. And give it just a little more. That feels good. So these were the old dust caps, pretty rotten and broken. ordered new ones online from that vintage CB down in the US of A. Nice. Just tighten this up a little bit so it doesn't fall out. That'll hold it until I get the tire on. I gotta go through the bin and find those two bolts.
I got the front tire set up in place. Just get it buttoned up, and then get the back tire on and be able to roll it around. That's one side. I can snug those up and then go looking for the bolts some more.
I hung the back shocks on. Not sure what kind of condition they're in. If they're original or not. They sort of look original, but I'll let time decide what how they work out. They're about ready to set the back tire in place, and then I should be able to move it around a little bit. I'm just going to start putting the back wheel on. I thought I'd just check this. The brake shoes, and they're really close to 5 mil. The tolerance apparently is 2. That's when you should replace them. So yeah, these they look to be in pretty good shape. Nice even wear. So I don't think I'll replace those. So I slid it up into place. Just gonna, not gonna put the chain on yet. So I'm just gonna get it sort of centered. Just so I can roll it around. I think I want to get it over to my other garage at the apartment. Then I can get the workbench brought back here for some of the finer work. I had a look at the bearings as well, and I think I mentioned before, they look to be in really good shape. There's no binding. You know, seem to spin freely without any sound, so I think I'll just leave them. Yeah, that should work for now. So I brought the bike back over to my apartment garage along with a few tools and a whole bunch of bits and pieces. Gonna start putting bolting stuff back on. I did start last night without the camera. Put together the rear brake linkage and whatnot. But you know, I'll carry on, try to video as much as I can. Yeah, so just gonna put the little holder here for the rear brake switch back on. And after a bit of looking last night, I found the 2 lower triple tree bolts. They were in a bag with some other stuff. Come on, there we go. Get the horn back in place. Get the fender in place now. I think I might be one bolt or maybe two short for this, if I remember when I took it off. That's one side.
See if I can get this other side in. Yeah, I'll hold it for now until I get two more short 6mm bolts.